Hey everybody, Ron here with Gamer the Blathering. So today, RPG a Day number 13, and it's to describe how my play has evolved. So there's a lot of ways my play has evolved. I'm gonna cover this both from the game master standpoint and from the player standpoint, and maybe kind of hit the high points for the most part. As a game master, a few things have happened over the years. I've gone in and out of using Game Master screens. I've gone in and out of using miniatures and back and whatever. And a lot of it has been about smoothing things out. Uh, a lot of it has been techniques that I've picked up over 30 years of game mastering. And so I'll talk a little bit about that. From a game mastering standpoint, um, I used to be a big die roll fudger, like to the point where not that it didn't matter what the players did, but they were never unsafe. They were never, I always fudged in favor of the players, which I thought was a good thing at the time, and now I don't agree with that anymore. I actually now roll 100% of the time in front of people, and the dice fall where they may, and we, to be a little punny, roll with it, and that's a huge thing, and that's probably been the last decade that I've gotten into doing that. I'm more into cheat sheets now than I was into Game Master screens. It reduces that barrier. I used to freak out thinking somebody was going to see my notes. My stance on player cheating has changed a ton. These days, if a player cheats and it makes them happy and it's not negatively affecting the rest of the table, I care a lot less than I used to. I used to look for it hawkishly. I will still occasionally, double check a roll, not to see if somebody's cheating, but to make sure that I've my wife's not a big fan of some of the math involved in role playing games, and so I've gotten this habit of looking at the dice and giving her a hand with calculating some of the weirder stuff. So I do tend to spot check rolls, but for the most part, you know what? If fudging a dice roll is gonna, as a player, change your life, go for it. I don't care. Um, I my miniatures stance. I used to never use miniatures. Then for a while I had to use miniatures, and then I went back to never miniatures, and now I am. It depends. So I like using them for those more complex combat situations. I have a couple of players at my table that prefer them, so I use them when the scene calls for it, and it's in moderation, right? You end up with all this, all things in moderation. So that's kind of the some of the changes that I've made there. I've changed the way that I prep. I used to not prep at all and do the whole thing off the top of my head, and now I at least have an idea of the stat blocks. I write a little bit of an outline. If it's a short enough outline, I can keep it in my head, but I still at least think about it before I sit down to play, which I didn't used to do. Um, and maybe that's because I'm a little bit older, so I need a little more stuff there. I've changed the way I deal with character names. I like everybody to have nameplates, and once play starts, I don't call them by their player name. I call on them by their character name, and I think that helps with immersion a little bit. There's probably more, but that's all I'm going to get into from a GMing standpoint. From a player standpoint, my play has evolved in that I am willing to play outside of my comfort zone a little more. I'll play in one game. I'll play a super suave sort of grifter. In another game, I'll play this overpowering, like uber warrior type. In another game, I might play a complete coward. I think it's fun to switch it up. I have I have played other genders. I have played other sexualities. And to me, it's a great way to explore these concepts. Also, I am not enamored with succeeding all the time. I'm actually, as a player, into exploring failure and seeing what it can do for my story, my player's story, right? And I think that's a big thing that's changed. I think that might be the biggest change on, quote, both sides of the screen. I hate that phrase. I guess we all know what it means, but since I don't use the screen anymore, it's a little weird for me. Anyway, I'm digressing again. But I like exploring those concepts of succeeding with a cost, or abject failure, failing forward. These different things. I don't have to win all the time, because I'd like to see what happens to my character when they lose. So there you go. That is day 14, and I'm going to do my best to be wearing a different shirt for day 15. Until then, do good, avoid evil, and play more games.